Hey guys, it's Mark from Migraine Professional. I used to suffer from migraines and headaches until about 5 years ago when I figured out how to beat them, and I've been migraine free ever since. Now I teach other people how to do the same, and in this video, we're going to be talking about 7 neurotoxins you have to avoid with migraines. Now, what we need to understand is that once we've gotten to the point of migraining, once we've gotten to the point of daily or chronic migraines, our body is compromised. It is not functioning like it should, and it is not just our brain that is not functioning like it should. Our body does not function in isolation. As much as you go to a neurologist, and then you go to an endocrinologist, and then you go to a gynecologist, and you go to a GP and whatever, all of these systems are connected and they all depend on each other. And so it is not just the brain that is affected. We need to address this from an integrated perspective. So by the time we're migraining, our body is compromised, and we need to take steps to take the burden off of our body, and especially take the burden off of our brain. Now, what we need to understand with neurotoxins and toxins in general is that our body is always detoxing. It is always trying to clear out. It is always trying to remove the chemicals and the particles that are not supposed to be there. Now, there are a couple of things that kind of stand in the way of neurotoxins getting into our body and then getting into our brain. So first off, we have to understand that our microbiome is always protecting us. And now our microbiome is the community of microorganisms living in our gut, and they protect us. Not only do they protect us from parasites and funguses and intruders and toxins, but they also feed us nutrients. And we have to understand that when we have a healthy microbiome, we are much more resilient. So we always want to be making sure that we're getting our prebiotics, that we're getting exposure to the outside, we're feeding that microbiome, and we're not damaging it with things like unnecessary antibiotics and steroids. So we always want to make sure we support that microbiome, because they're our first line of defense against us eating things and then eating chemicals and toxins. They're our first kind of line of defense that prevents those from getting through our gut wall. But once they get through our gut wall, if we have a compromised microbiome, then all of the kind of blood supply goes through the liver. And now the liver is a master organ. It is so incredibly smart. And it's always protecting us from neurotoxins. It's always filtering the blood. It's always taking these harmful particles out of the blood. It's neutralizing them, and then it's flushing them out. But detoxification, when it neutralizes these chemicals, that's a resource-intensive process. We want to make sure we have a very highly nutritious diet. We're getting all of our B vitamins, we're getting all of our trace minerals, and we're getting lots of sulfur-containing foods like the onion family, the cruciferous vegetables, mushrooms. Those are all very high in sulfur. That really helps our liver detoxify. And then we want to make sure we support our organs of detoxification. Now, I go into in depth what to do about and how to support the organs of detoxification in the 10 steps program. So if you go to migrainprofessional.com, you can see the 10 steps program there. But we have to understand that our lungs are constantly trying to exhale toxins. Our skin is always trying to sort of take out these toxins and sweat these toxins out. Our large intestine, our intestines are always trying to push out toxins through our stool. All that waste is coming out, and our kidneys are always trying to excrete toxins. Those toxins are coming out through our urine, our stool, our sweat, our breath. It's our body's constantly trying to detoxify, because detoxification is absolutely essential. Not only can we take in particles that are toxic to us, but byproducts of our metabolism need to be flushed out. So we always want to make sure we support those. Now, the 7 neurotoxins, first and foremost, is fluoride. So fluoride is it was generally thought that fluoride was associated with less cavities, and so fluoride was included in many tap water supplies as a way to combat cavities. But now this is actually showing that fluoride in excessive amounts is a neurotoxin. and it's very damaging for our mitochondria as well. But the main sources that fluoride is coming in is through tap water. We really want to be careful with our tap water. We either want to test our tap water to make sure that it's clean, or we want to completely switch away from tap water. We want to have our own filters that we're using to clear out our water, because there's many more things than just fluoride in tap water. And then, of course, toothpaste. We want to switch away from any fluoride containing toothpaste. We have to remember that if a baby eats a tube of toothpaste, they will die. It's very, very poisonous. Of course, some people will say that the toxin makes the dose, but there's also accumulated toxicity. So our body will accumulate toxicity, and if our organs are not functioning properly, if they're not detoxifying, if we don't have the nutrients and the resources to detoxify, which in many migraine sufferers, it's very suspect, then we want to stay away from any sources of extra exposure. So we want to not have toothpaste with fluoride in it. We want to make sure that we're not drinking water that has fluoride in it. Even if you're drinking well water, you want to be careful with naturally occurring sources of fluoride from the minerals in the earth. You want to be careful. You want to get away from those areas. You want to use filters. And then, of course, the dentist, you want to not get the fluoride rinse from the dentist. Now, the next one is BPA. And so BPA, also known as bisphenol A, is a endocrine disruptor, and it's an estrogen mimicker. So it acts like estrogen in the body. It confuses the body into thinking that there's estrogen. It attaches to estrogen receptors. It causes a lot of problems. And it's also very destructive to our oral tolerance, and it adds a lot of confusion to our immune system. So some of the places that BPA is showing up is in containers. I mean, the classic thing is Tupperware containers, but any plastic containers, anything made from petroleum products, so your plastics and your rubbers, you want to be careful. You want to be careful with receipts, even just touching receipts. Receipts are full of BPA. BPA is generally used in plastics to make them softer. So that's kind of a way to determine. And linings of any, the most common thing is linings of cans or linings of cups, your Tim Hortons cups, your Starbucks cups. You really want to be careful. And then the next one is lead. So as we all know, lead is it's incredibly poisonous. You want to stay from any sources of lead. We know we used to use lead paint, so you want to stay away from any old things, old toys, old furniture, old paint. Get away from them. Just get as far as you can from them, because lead is not something to mess with. It gets into the body, it gets into fat tissues like our brain, and then it sits there and it stays there, and it's a very tough process to get it out, and it's very tough on the body. So again, tap water. Flint, Michigan isn't the only place that is having major tap water problems because of the infrastructure. You want to make sure that you're cleaning out your tap water, you're getting filters. And then again, toys, especially toys that are coming from China and third world countries where there's no regulation on the toys. You want to be really careful. Old things like we talked about, and then metals. Again, cheap metals that are coming in from other countries that aren't regulated. They're very often polluted with things like lead and mercury and arsenic and things like that. You just want to stay away from them. So the next one is mercury. We all know mercury, mercury in thermometers, mercury in fish. It's a big problem. You want to kind of minimize your exposure, especially if you're pregnant. You want absolutely zero exposure. But again, in fish, you want to stay away from the big fish. The bigger a fish is, the more time it has to accumulate. So bioaccumulation is when, so a little fish eats some plankton, which has a little bit of mercury in it, and it eats plankton throughout its life, and that accumulates in the body. And then a bigger fish eats that fish, so it eats that whole fish's lifetime, and then it accumulates its mercury and all the fish that it eats through its lifetime. And then a bigger fish eats that fish and eats the mercury of all of those fish that it ate throughout its lifetime that was stored in its tissues. So there's like an exponential amount of mercury found in things like tuna and shark and whale. You want to stay away from those. Then again, amalgam fillings. Amalgam fillings, your silver fillings, silver cavities, they can be about 50% mercury You want to get those out. You want to get those out as fast as possible, and you want to stay away from putting metals into your mouth because, again, your body is electric, and so when you start adding metals into your mouth, you can start to create a current, and this really starts to mess with your body. It starts to create electrolysis with the metals, leaching them out. It's really not good. And then again, shots are used. Mercury is used in shots to create an immune reaction, especially the flu shot. You want to be careful with your flu shots, especially if you're already compromised. And then jewelry, again, cheap jewelry, old jewelry, jewelry that's imported from other places that there isn't regulation. You want to be careful of. And then we have aluminum. So aluminum, big thing is in cookware and tin foil. You want to stay away from all tin foil with cooking. You wanna kind of vet your cookware. You want to make sure that there's no BPA, BPS, or aluminum. You want to kind of stay away from those. You want to get something like a like cast iron or titanium plated cookware. And then again, aluminum is found in some shots to help kind of increase the immune reaction to the shots. So you want to be careful if you're already compromised there. And then pharmaceuticals, especially things like antacids. A lot of pharmaceuticals have extremely high amounts of aluminum in them. You want to be careful. You want to vet it out. You want to see how much aluminum are you really taking in. I mean, for a completely healthy person, taking in this aluminum probably won't do anything, but once you start getting compromised, once you start getting to that place where your microbiome's not functioning, your liver's not detoxifying properly, you're already backed up, you're kind of running into problems. Then, next thing, of course, all migraine sufferers, headache sufferers know MSG is a big problem. It's found in additives, flavoring, soups. Make sure to see our video on MSG and glutamate that explains it in more depth. But basically, MSG, monosodium glutamate. Glutamate is a excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, and excitotoxicity, which is the overexcitation of our nerve cells, can actually lead to their death. We want to stay away from that, and we want to be careful with any sources. Anything that says natural or artificial flavoring, we want to be careful with. We want to kind of stay away from. We want to be careful with any additives. And then again, soups, especially in Asian cuisine, MSG is used in a lot of soups. Then aspartame. So aspartame, big source of controversy. You want to stay away from it as much as you can. It's better to use sugar than to use a lot of these artificial sweeteners. For some people, stevia might be okay, xylitol might be okay, monk fruit might be okay, honey is good, maple syrup's good, dates are great. You want to be careful with artificial sweeteners like aspartame. It's found in gum, soda, and then again, sweeteners, any kinds of artificial sweeteners you really want to be careful of. You want to vet them. So really it kind of comes down to going through and finding out all of the areas of your life where these things are coming in and just adding to that burden. Just kind of adding a little bit every day to that burden that your body is going through. If your body doesn't have the capacity to remove it right away, what it'll do is it'll store it into fat tissue. It'll almost store it into fat tissue because it's protected there, and it can save it for later. Because if it allows it to roam free in the body, it can cause a lot of damage. So it stores it, puts it away until there's enough resources, until you're not under so much burden that you start developing a problem. But if this continues for years and years and years, you start developing big problems. So let me know in the comments below which one was the biggest kind of shock to you, and where do you find the most toxicity is coming into your life. Thanks. Hey, it's Mark from migraineprofessional.com. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe in the bottom left corner, and if you want to learn more about migraines and headaches than you've ever known before, and understand what causes them, what creates them, and what you can do about them, make sure to go to migraineprofessional.com. Thanks.